I don't think that I'm as sad as I could be in these circumstances. I get it's disappointing that we've missed out on another trophy, and that's the third season now that we've competed at a very high level but ultimately come up with nothing. And there is that growing frustration of being a nearly team but not quite making it there. Of course, this season in the league, we weren't even a nearly team, we just haven't been very good. However, in the Champions League, we'd actually done pretty well, but tonight was PSG's night. I think there is just it was their night. And you could talk about some of the inexperience they have. They have quite a few young players, but they also have players like Hakimi, who has played for a long time with PSG, and this is a team that's been to several semifinals over the past few seasons. Like sooner or later, their time had to come, and it is an immensely talented team, a team that's probably going to go and win the Champions League because they seem to have all of the qualities of a winning team, including the ability to see out a game and to play well out of possession. Their first goal came completely against the run of play. And honestly, in the first 30 minutes, it's probably the most relentless I've seen us play this season under Arteta. It did kind of bring me back to Arteta ball of like 4 years ago, where we'd absolutely dominate the opening half hour, score nothing, and get punished for it later. But PSG is a good team. I think that we could have had a few goals. Declan Rice had a great chance very early on. One I actually thought he did score initially, and then I realized it had gone wide of the goal, so it didn't actually go in. That was disappointing. But I was really happy with how he played and how he approached it. And it felt like the players really did understand the just how big this moment was, and ultimately didn't work out. And Donnarumma was also really good today. Odegaard had a really nice shot. I'd like to see him gain his confidence back on those long shots because he did used to score more of those. So he had a really nice, powerful shot. I'm not sure how Donnarumma made the save because he had to react really late. He didn't see it until it was really late, and it was a great, powerful shot, and then somehow he managed. Which Donnarumma has been very impressive in the Champions League for PSG as a whole. I think the moment I well and truly knew it was PSG's night was when Saka had that typical Saka move, cut it inside to his left foot, take a nice shot, and almost always those shots from just around the corner of the box, they curl into the net. It's always a great finish, and it had all the making of that typical Bukayo Saka goal, and then Donnarumma pulled off a save. And yeah, that's when I knew it was gonna be PSG's night because Donnarumma wasn't letting anything past him, and even when we had opportunities, we weren't scoring on him enough. Our inability to get anyone in the box hurt us, which it didn't end up hurting us against Madrid when it very easily could have. But especially near the end of the second half, Saka was putting in balls into a middle area in the box, and no one was there to get it, which of course brings the conversation back around to a striker. And I kind of, set them to one side after last season because we actually scored more goals than we had ever scored in a league season last year. And so even without a striker, we seem to be doing something right. But this time it seems like we really could use someone. And it'd have to be someone who fits Arteta's system. I've said a few times I don't think someone like Osimhen or Gyökeres would actually work with Arsenal very well. I think that Isak, Sesko, or Watkins would be a much better fit for us. I doubt Arteta would go for Watkins because Watkins is older now. But if we can get the right player, we can maybe build on this. And that's kind of what I think of the whole night. It's something that we can learn from and build from. PSG have had to wait a long time for this moment, and they've finally gotten it, and that might be something we have to wait for as well. Most of the teams that win the Champions League have gone through some form of pain and have had to fail. They fall down several times because the masters failed more than beginners tried. You have to get knocked down a few times, or at least quite often you do. Some teams are just so genuinely brilliant that they just run through everyone and end up winning it all. But most teams, unless you're Real Madrid, have gone through a lot of pain and turmoil to finally get to that moment. And that gives me some hope going forward because it was actually a pretty good game from us. But PSG they took their moments when they came. They scored against the run of play. We were relentless for 30 minutes, and still they were the ones who ended up having a lead. And so it is what it is. I know I should be frustrated and upset because we won't win anything again. We're still not guaranteed a Champions League spot. We're probably going to get it, but it's not actually official yet. We got to make sure we see out the last three results in the league now. There is a horror scenario where Tottenham and Chelsea both end up winning European silverware. Especially the Tottenham one scares me, especially if I'm going to have to root for Man United in a European final, which oh, I absolutely despise Man United, but it'd still be better if they won it than Tottenham. Yeah. I think we're still building towards something, and in the Champions League at least, I can be satisfied with what we've done this season. In the quarterfinals last year when we lost to Bayern, I think my overarching thoughts of the game was just that the more experienced team won. Bayern, who had been in that situation many times, were playing an Arsenal team who, for the most part, like most of their players had never been in a Champions League quarterfinal before. And so perhaps it wasn't surprising that Bayern ultimately knew what they had to do to see out the result. And that's maybe how I feel about this one because we're still a fairly young team, especially in the Champions League. This is our first, again, similar to how last season it was most of the players' first time in the quarterfinal. Again, it was the first time most of these players have been in a Champions League semifinal as well. And so every time they get knocked down, if you can learn from that, it's not a bad thing. So now we got to turn our efforts towards the Premier League and finish as high as we can. We're going to lose to Newcastle because we always lose to Newcastle. We're going to beat Southampton because Southampton are just appalling. So I think really it's going to come down to Liverpool over whether or not we can at least get second place and have a bit of pride in finishing as high as we could. It's been a poor season, especially domestically, but we can see it out the best we can. And there's not too much point dwelling on what we didn't do this season. All we can really do now is look forward to the summer and what we can do to add those few things because I really do think that we still are capable of doing more than we did this season. And I talked about how no one was getting in on Saka's balls. I wonder, like, even if Havertz or Jesus wasn't injured, they might have been there to score it. I know Moreno's actually done decently well as a forward, but also sometimes his positioning hasn't been great, which I don't really blame Moreno for because he is a midfielder that's being forced to play up front because we don't have anyone else. Like, of course, it's gonna be a struggle. So we gotta get someone who can take the creative pressure off Odegaard, I think. I wonder, there's been a lot of talk about his poor performances and what might be causing it. We'll see if he gets a postseason surgery and if he's actually had an injury that's been keeping up with him the whole season that he never completely got rid of. Maybe, maybe not. I guess that remains to be seen. But I also wonder if there is some fatigue. A lot of our attack runs through Odegaard, and once teams figure out how to beat that, it's kind of hard for him to function. And I think if we could get someone who can create like Odegaard, that would be a really good thing. And it looks like we might be signing Nygaard, which would be a good step forward. So I think sign that, get someone who can play up front, but who also fits in Arteta's system, and we still have a really good team. See what happens. Tough defeat, tough season, and yet I still think that we're heading in the right direction, even if it's hard to say that in the circumstances right now.